भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो
Hare Krishna.
भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मृतं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।
Hare Krishna. So we continue with our study of the Bhagavatam, and we continue with chapter 6 of the 7th canto. And here is Prahlad Maharaj is teaching to his classmates. Vidvana pittam danujha kutumbam umsam svalokaya nakalpate vai yasriya parakya vibhinna bhavas tamha prapadita yata vimudha. All my friends, sons of demons, in this material world, even those who are apparently advanced in education, have the propensity to consider this is mine, that is for others. Thus, they're always engaged in providing the necessity of life of their families in a limited conception of family life, just like uneducated cats and dogs. They are unable to take the spiritual knowledge, instead they're bewildered and overcome by ignorance. By Srila Prabhupada, in human society, there are attempts to educate the human beings, but for animal society, there is no such system, nor are animals able to be educated. Therefore, animals and unintelligent men are called vimudha, or ignorant, bewildered, whereas an educated person is called vidvan. The real vidvan is one who tries to understand his own position within this material world. For example, when Sanatana Goswami submitted to the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his first question was, Ke ami keno amaya jharita putraya? In other words, he wanted to know his constitutional position and why he was suffering from the threefold miseries of material existence. This is the process of education. One does not ask, who am I? What is the goal of my life? But instead follows the same animal propensities as cats and dogs. What is the use of his education? As discussed in the previous verse, a living being is entrapped by its fruitive activities, exactly like a silkworm trapped in its own cocoon. Sorry. Foolish persons are generally encaged by their fruitive actions, karma, because of a strong desire to enjoy this material world. Such attracted persons become involved in society, community, and nation, and waste their time not having profited from having obtained human forms. Especially in this age, Kali Yuga, great leaders, politicians, philosophers, and scientists are all engaged in foolish activities, thinking, this is mine and this is yours. Scientists invent nuclear weapons and collaborate with the big leaders to protect the interest of their own nation or society. In this verse, however, it is clearly stated that despite their so-called advanced knowledge, they actually have the same mentality as cats and dogs. As cats, dogs, and other animals, not knowing their true interest in life, become increasingly involved in ignorance. The so-called educated person who does not know his own self-interest or the true goal of life becomes increasingly involved in materialism. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj advised everyone to follow the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Specifically, at a certain point, one must give up family life and take to the renounced order of life to cultivate spiritual knowledge and thus become liberated. This is further discussed in the following verses. Yato na kaschit katu kutrachit va dinas namalam samartha vimochitu kamadrusham vihara kridamrigo yad nigado visarga tato vidurat pariritya daityeshu sangam vishayat makeshu upeta Narayan Adidevam Samukta Sangha Shito Pavarga.
I can read the translation. My dear friends, O sons of the demons, it is certain that no one bereft of knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has been able to liberate himself from material bondage at any time or in any country. Rather, those bereft of knowledge of the Lord are bound by the material laws. They are factually addicted to sense gratification and their target is woman. Indeed, they are actually playthings in the hands of attractive women. Victimized by such conception of life, they become surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And thus they are shackled to material bondage. Those who are very much addicted to this conception of life are called demons. Therefore, although you are sons of demons, keep aloof from such persons and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana, the origin of all demigods, because the ultimate goal for the devotee of Narayan is liberation from bondage of material existence. Purport. Prahlad Maharaj has maintained the philosophical point of view that one should give up the dark well of family life and go to the forest to take shelter of the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hitva atmapatam grahamandakopam manam gato yadharimashtrayeta. In this verse also, he stresses the same point. In the history of human society, no one at any time or any place has been liberated because of too much affection and attachment for his family. Even in those who are apparently very educated, the same family attachment is there. They cannot give it up. They cannot give up the association of their families, even in old age or invalidity, for they are attached to sense enjoyment. As we have several times discussed, yan maithunadi grahamedi sukhami tucham, so-called householders are simply attracted by sexual enjoyment. Thus, they keep themselves shackled in family life, and furthermore, they want their children to be shackled in the same way. Playing the parts of playboys in the hands of women, they glide down to the darkest regions of material existence. Andanta gobhir vishatma tamishram punah punascharvitam charvananam. Because they are unable to control their senses, they continue a life of chewing the chewed and therefore transcend to the darkest material regions.
Descend.
One should give up the association of such demons and adhere to the association of devotees. Thus one will be able to be liberated from material bondage.
Are you reading or are you commenting or what do you want to do?
I want to ask a question. I find all these things very heavy, very I feel that because of this kind of thinking and attempting to kind of become detached, a lot of devotees have very messy family life. They don't take responsibility. They don't want to earn money. They just sit down and they say, oh, you are just, your children are just nonsense. And there is a lot of that. So I feel that this level of material detachment and this level of surrender to Krishna, I find that it is very unrealistic in today's age. And what needs to be preached is contrary to this. What needs to be preached is you can actually please the Lord by being responsible. Because as an astrologer, I see that most people don't have great karma with marriage and all that. Anyway, so naturally they will become detached because it's not like they're going to please, what this purports are saying, what Prabhupada is saying. Okay, I understand it's Shastra. Maybe that was at the time when husband and wives were exactly doing their duties, and husband was really keeping the family so happy, that the wife was so happy and she's so sweet and the kids were so well behaved, and the attachment. But in today's day and age, I find this to be very irrelevant.
So what's the question?
The question is, how do we reconcile between Shastra and reality? And reality, I don't see any in my almost 20 years as a palmist astrologer. I've never found somebody coming and telling me how attached they are. They're so happy in family life that that's a bondage. But I've always found the opposite. They're so dissatisfied. They're frustrated with the husband or frustrated with the wife, or they're brokenhearted. And there is nobody coming and saying, hey, I'm so happy with my Grihastha life or Grihamedi life. So my question is, how do you reconcile between this reality that everybody's marriage life is a mess, and here it's saying, hey, good married life is an obstacle?
Okay, there are two things first. First of all, detachment and frustration are two different things. One may be frustrated in a relation, but that's not detachment, because the same people want another husband, another wife. So that's not detachment, that's just frustration. That's the first thing to understand. The people come and complain, they're not detached.
Mm.
The second thing is that depends on what you mean by good. No, for Vaishnavas, for Bhagavatas, no, good means good Krishna consciousness. So there are so many devotees who have, would say, good families, and the children grow up in Krishna consciousness, they get married with a devotee and so on. So those are good families, but they're also substantially engaged in devotional service. So that's the standard of good. Here we are talking about, he is talking to demons. Demons were godless. And so it's a different concept of good, meaning for a Vaishnava, this is bad. He's talking to demons. These demons, I'm sure, I mean, they must be, imagine that the parents of these kids, they are with Hiranyakashipu, they're their assistants, probably they're the aristocracy of this kingdom. So they enjoy power, they enjoy sense gratification. They see that even the devatas are following their boss. And there are children studying very good school. They're the teachers are the sons of Sukracharya. It's like for now a big America or English university or something. So here is attacking that concept of good, which is not good at all, because one feels, yeah, I'm satisfied, I am protected by all this, and then everything is gone. So there's no dichotomy between Shastra and reality. Shastra is a description of reality. Now, certain aspects of Shastra may be more relevant, and some are less. Like some are descriptions, some are prescriptions. Some are description like, okay, the Pracheta is going to meditate underwater. That's obviously not something to be followed. Or say Sati Devi burning herself. That's not something that anybody who has a negative father to Krishna consciousness has to follow, has to commit suicide by burning herself. So certain things we need to extract some principle. But here it's quite clear. So we are not talking about devotees here. Obviously, devotees, they may be a little careful to be too attached. I mean, you see devotees that they might get too much into business and they stop chanting the rounds and and this and that. So there is a warning also for devotees, but this is mostly for materialistic people who older, and if we see in our families, we also see materialistic relatives. I see it in my family. I'm sure you can see in your family. They just think of this world. They just think of the children. They just think of the properties, and there is really not much religion or devotional service. And here Prahlad Maharaj is being straightforward. He says, the beginning of the translation, no one bereft of knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as being able to liberate himself from material bondage at any time or in any country. It could be India, it could be Italy, it could be China. So it's just saying that some people are not interested in God, and therefore they keep taking birth again and again. And that's a fact. Now, of course, in every culture there may be some spirituality, so there is some mixture. Obviously, he is talking to people with their culture. There is no mixture. It's all demoniac in one sense against Vishnu. Even
That's the point. Even though they're demoniac, the description given here is they're so attached, they're so dutiful to the family. And I'm just realizing that attachment, it has the other side of attachment. Like you were saying, like it's not the devotees sometimes are detached, but they're looking for another partner. But that's because of attachment, like because they're attached to enjoying this type of demonic, like what he has described, for sense gratificatory relationships. Then they are still looking for that kind of whatever it is, like.
so
pleasure.
therefore it's fully relevant. So how is not relevant?
Yeah, I mean, your explanations led me to the conclusion that attachment, it doesn't necessarily mean attachment is present only if there is pleasure. Attachment can remain even with displeasure. And that attachment is what is condemned here. And regardless of whether you get what you want or not, that attachment can, even if you're frustrated, that certain attachment can drag you down. Even if you have a really nice family, which is just mundane sense gratification, it'll drag you down. So either ways, so attachment is the problem.
Now, obviously, it's a fact that some parts of the Bhagavad, because the Bhagavad is the highest scripture. It doesn't dilly-dally with, okay, you could go to Swarga, it's not so bad, it's very good, The Bhagavatam, it's detachment and Jnana Vairagya, and with the goal of bhakti, or bhakti, which becomes Jnana Vairagya. Now, yes, somebody who is immature, somebody who is uncultured or impatient or not very intelligent may take out of context, or may think that certain thing applies to him, but that doesn't apply. Like there was a man here in Mayapur that I don't know, wanted to be a Babaji, just sat down in a Goshala and just chanted so many rounds a day, this, that. But then I think he left Bhakti, left the movement, and so on. So in other words, yes, detachment is there, but it shouldn't be what you call forced. In fact, we see Prahlad Maharaj also gets married. And when for instance, Bali Maharaj, when there's a problem with Bali Maharaj and Vamana Devi, he also appears on the scene to see his grandson. So these devotees didn't live artificial lives, although they were liberated, of course, Prahlad Maharaj was always liberated. So now the wisdom, therefore we need the spiritual master. It tells us this is good for you, this is not good for you. In our movement, of course, many immature people took sannyas and then gave up because they were just not ready.
Right.
Or either they were immature or they were attached. Like Srila Prabhupada said, sometimes so many people want to take sannyas, he said, they don't want to be sevaka, they want to be sevya. They want to be served, because obviously sannyasas got some privileges in society. So anyway, so one should see what applies to him or not. Okay, can we move on?
You can do the Sanskrit.
Nahi achyutam nayachutam prinayato bhavayasu suradmaja atmavat sarvabhutanam siddhatvat hiya sarvata. Want me to read?
I can. My dear sons of demons, The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, is the original Supersoul, the father of all living entities. Consequently, there are no impediments to please him or worshipping him under any conditions. Whether one be a child or an old man, the relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a fact, and therefore there is no difficulty in pleasing the Lord. What does it mean? The relationship between living entities and the Supreme Lord is always a fact, and therefore there is no difficulty to please the Lord. Means?
Because ontologically, the soul and the super soul are connected, and therefore, anybody can just pray in his heart, and the Lord understands and hears. Other systems are kind of, they depend on so many things. Karma kanda, you got to do these rituals and this paraphernalia and these ingredients. Yoga, you got to go and do this pranayama and this and that. But bhakti is direct and is natural because the relation is there. It's not something invented. It's not something, it's just like Srila Prabhupada said, it's not an artificial imposition on the mind because, we are meant to please the Lord, to play with the Lord, to be friends with the Lord, to be lovers of God. That's what our nature is. So it's a fact. While, say, our relation with the country, it's not really a fact. The country did not exist before. I will not be the citizen of the country next. Country just an imagination. Some people put the name, some people put some boundaries, and so on. Some people put some laws. So it's not real. But the relation with the Lord is real beyond all this dreamy stuff.
Okay. Purport. One may ask, one is certainly very attached to family life, but if one gives up family to be attached to the service of the Lord, one must undergo the same endeavor and trouble. Therefore, what is the benefit of taking the trouble to engage in the service of the Lord? This is not a valid objection. The Lord asserts in Bhagavad Gita 14:4, Sarvayonishu kanteya murtaya sambhavantiya tasham brahma mahatyonir aham bija pradapata. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. The Supreme Lord, Narayan, is the seed-giving father of all living entities, because the living entities are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Amaivamsho Jiva Bhuta. As there is no difficulty in establishing the intimate relationship between a father and son, there is no difficulty in re-establishing the natural intimate relationship between Narayan and the living entities. Somehow the thing keeps moving, the screen, and it's difficult to read when the mouse is moving. Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. If one performs even very slight devotional service, Narayan is always ready to save one from the greatest danger. The definite example is Ajamil. Ajamil separated himself from the Supreme Personality of Godhead by performing many sinful activities and was condemned by Amaraj to be severely punished. But because at the time of death he chanted the name of Narayan, although he was calling not for the Supreme Lord, but Supreme Lord Narayan, but for his son named Narayan, he was saved from the hands of Yamaraj. Therefore, pleasing Narayana does not require as much endeavor as pleasing one's family, community, and nation. We have seen important political leaders killed for a slight discrepancy in their behavior. Therefore, pleasing one's society, family, community, and nation is extremely difficult. Pleasing Narayan, however, is not at all difficult. It is very easy. One's duty is to revive one's relationship with Narayan. A slight endeavor in this direction will make the attempt successful. In pleasing his so-called
Whereas one will never be successful. So,
Whereas one will never be successful in pleasing his so-called family, society, and nation, even if one endeavors to sacrifice his life. The simple endeavor involved in devotional service of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, hearing and chanting the holy names of the Lord can make one successful in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore bestowed his blessings by saying, Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. All glories to Sri Krishna Sankirtana. If one wants to derive the actual benefit from this human form, he must take to the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. I like this point. It's so true. Whatever we do in mundane relationships, no matter what sacrifice we do, is never enough. But Krishna is so kind, and even one flower we offer, he remembers for the all eternity. Like he's Karuna Sindhu, he's Dina Bandhu. He's so kind and merciful.
Okay, next.
Paravareshu bhuteshu brahmantastavarādishu bhautikeshu virakeshu bhutve-shatamahat-sukcha guneshu gunasamyaya-cha gunavyati-kare-tata eka eva paro hyatma bhagavan-ishvaro vyaya पृथग् आत्मस्वरूपेण दृश्यरूपेण च स्वयं व्याप्या व्यापक निर्देश्यो ह्यनिर्देश्यो विकल्पिता केवलानुभवनन्दा स्वरूप परमेश्वरा माययांतर्हितैश्वर्या yate gunasargaya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller, who is infallible and indefatigable, is present in different forms of
Indefatigable.
Indefatigable. Is present in different forms of life, from the inert living beings, stavara, such as the plants, to Brahma, the foremost created living being. He is also present in the varieties of material creations and in the material elements, the total material energy and the modes of material nature, Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun, as well as the unmanifested material nature and the false ego. Although he is one, he is present everywhere, and he is also transcendental supersoul, the cause of all causes, who is present as the observer in the core of the hearts of all living entities. He is indicated as that which is pervaded and as the all-pervading supersoul. But actually, he cannot be indicated. He is changeless and undivided. He is simply perceived as a supreme Satchidananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Being covered by the curtain of the external energy, to the atheist, he appears non-existent. Purport. Not only is the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the supersoul of all living entities, at the same
present as the supersoul.
Not only is the Supreme Personality of Godhead present as the supersoul of all living entities, at the same time, he pervades everything in the entire creation. He exists in all circumstances and at all times. He exists in the heart of Lord Brahma and also in the cores of the hearts of the hogs, dogs, trees, plants, and so on. He is present everywhere. He is present not only in the heart of living entity, but also in material things, even in the atoms, protons, and electrons being explored by material scientists. The Lord is present in three features as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Because he is present everywhere, he is described as Sarva Khalva Idam Brahma. Vishnu exists beyond Brahman. Bhagavad Gita confirms that Krishna, by his Brahman feature, is all-pervading. Maya tatam idam sarvam. But Brahma depends upon Krishna. Brahmano hi pratishtitam. Without Krishna, there could be no existence of Brahman or Paramatma. Therefore, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the ultimate realization of the absolute truth. Although he is present as the Paramatma in the core of everyone's heart, he is nonetheless one, either as an individual or as an all-pervading Brahman. The supreme cause is Krishna, and devotees who have surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can realize Him and His presence within the universe and within the atom. Andhantarastha paramanu chayantarastam. This realization is possible only for devotees who have fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord. For others, it is not possible. This is confirmed by the Lord Himself. Daivyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mama eva prapadyante bayami tam tarantite. The process of surrender and devotional attitude is accepted by fortunate living being. After wandering through many varieties of life on many planetary systems, when one comes to the real understanding of the absolute truth by the grace of a devotee, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Maunam janmanamante jnanavamam prapadyate. Prahlad Maharaj's class friends, who were born of Daitya families, thought that realizing the absolute was extremely difficult. Indeed, we have experienced that many people say this very thing. Actually, however, this is not so. The Absolute, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is most intimately related to all living entities. Therefore, if one understands the Vaishnava philosophy, which explains how He is present everywhere and how He acts everywhere to worship the Supreme Lord or to realize Him, is not at all difficult. Realization of the Lord, however, is possible only in the association of devotees. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his teachings to Rupa Goswami, said, Brahmanda pramite kono bhagyavan jiva Guru Krishna prasade paya bhakti lata bhija. The living entity in the material condition wanders through many varieties of life and many varieties of circumstances. But if he comes in contact with a pure devotee and is intelligent enough to take instructions from the pure devotee regarding the process of devotional service, he can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin of Brahman and Paramatma, without difficulty. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya says, Antaryami pratagatma vyaptaga kalo harismrita pratyatama savritatva hareraishwaram nagnayate. The Lord is present as Antaryami in everyone's heart and is visible in the individual soul covered by a body. Indeed, He is everywhere, at every time and every condition. But because He is covered by the curtain of material energy, to an ordinary person, there appears to be no God.
So,
Tasmad sarveshu bhuteshu dayam kuruta sauhridam bhavam asuram unmujya yaya tushya adukshaja. Therefore, my dear young friends born of demons, please act in such a way that the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the conception of material knowledge, will be satisfied. Give up your demonic nature and act without enmity or duality. Show mercy to all living entities by enlightening them in devotional service, thus becoming their well-wishers. Purport. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tattvata. One can understand the Supreme Personality as He is only by devotional service. Prahlad Maharaj ultimately instructed his class friends, the sons of the demons, to accept the process of devotional service by preaching the science of Krishna consciousness to everyone. Preaching is the best service to the Lord. The Lord will immediately be extremely satisfied with one who engages in the service of preaching Krishna consciousness. This is confirmed by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita. Nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priya kritama. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. If one sincerely tries his best to spread Krishna consciousness by preaching the glories of the Lord and His supremacy, even if he is imperfectly educated, he becomes the dearmost servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is bhakti. As one performs this service for humanity without discrimination between friends and enemies, the Lord becomes satisfied and the mission of one's life is fulfilled. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore advised everyone to become a guru, devotee, and preach Krishna consciousness. Hare dekhe tare kaha Krishna Upadesh. Hare dekha tare kaha Krishna Upadesh. That is the easiest way to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By such preaching, the preacher becomes satisfied, and those to whom he preaches are also satisfied. This is the process of bringing peace and tranquility to the entire world. Bhuktaram yagya tapasam sarvalokam maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam jnatva shantim hrichyate. One is expected to understand these three formulas of knowledge concerning the Supreme Lord, that he is the supreme enjoyer, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that he is the best well-wisher and friend of everyone. A preacher should personally understand these truths and preach them to everyone. Then there will be peace and tranquility all over the world. The word sauhridam, friendliness, is very significant in this verse. People are generally ignorant of Krishna consciousness, and therefore, to become their best well-wisher, one should teach them about Krishna consciousness without discrimination. Since the Supreme Lord Vishnu is situated in the core of everyone's heart, everybody is a temple of Vishnu. One should not misuse this understanding as an excuse for such words as Daridra Narayana. If Narayana lives in the house of a Daridra, a poor man, this does not mean that Narayana becomes poor. He lives everywhere, in the houses of the poor and those of the rich. But in all circumstances, he remains Narayan. To think that he becomes either poor or rich is a material calculation. He is always Sadaishwarya Purna, full in six opulences in all circumstances. Any comments?
No. But basically, you see how the teaching is completely diametrically opposed to what they were learning in school. And sometimes our preaching is also completely diametrically opposed. In fact, we could say that if we are not diametrically opposed to materialistic life, we might have a problem. We may be afraid, we may be just, of course, there is a way of doing it in a tactful way, but if we are kind of just try to please people with our presentation, not to challenge anything, no, maybe just we just are afraid, or we're just another version of materialistic, mundane religions. We just want to make friends, have money, not really shake people. See here, here Prabhupada Maharaj is not just say, hey, please give some money to the temple or like that. No, just completely different. Don't think a friend of an enemy, just become favorable to the Lord, like that. Knowing that this will create tension, obviously. It's not stupid, he knows this will create a lot of tension. He experienced himself. His father tried to kill him in so many ways. So he knows this will create tension. But at the same time, the Bhagavatam is supposed to create a revolution. Yes, we can be tactful, we can be friendly, we can be diplomatic in the positive sense of the world, but then we have to also be straightforward. This is Krishna and this is Maya, and Maya will never make you happy. Krishna is the only thing that will make you happy.
How to develop this quality? Like sometimes it's not easy to like, no, don't be jealous or they don't be envious of others and see everybody equally and be kind to everybody. And I mean, it's not something so artificial. I can't just buy that on Amazon, that kind of mood. How do you cultivate that? Because there can be so many kind of injustice going around, or people treat us badly and trigger us. And how do you keep that? How to understand that everything is Krishna's hand and to not develop that, like
everybody will die anyway. So whatever stage play, whatever role, whatever persona one is expressing, it's all temporary anyway. So what is there to be envious?
Well, how do you know when to fight back and when to just accept it as Lord's will?
What? Like what?
Say somebody is trying to stop you from doing a service or stop you from doing something.
Well,
Or
there are ways. There are ways. Every case is different. Obviously, one should choose one's own battles. And no, there are different ways. There is prayer. There is being open. There is ask for advice, and so there are ways. Main thing to be open to the will of God, and not to just act a false ego. Oh, they said this, I have to say back. Oh, they smeared me, I had to fight back. I had to smear them back. That's that's again the total duality, total materialistic duality. Sometimes you have to, you see in the Bhagavatam, Devanti Brahmanas, for instance, he took, in the 11th canto, he was being insulted. Even Rishabhadeva himself, they were insulted, spat upon. They did not start fighting. Now, the general point is, if we are attacked personally, we don't care. We tolerate. We think, okay, it's our karma, and Hare Krishna, we forgive our attacker. But if the movement, if the mission is attacked, if Krishna or the Guru is attacked, then of course we need to defend. It's a different mood. Otherwise, all life goes by, fighting some insults or something.
yeah.
Now,
you
as you said, if it's something related to the service, yeah, maybe we need to but even then we have to say, is Krishna wants us to defend our service, or maybe he wants us to change our service. Every case is a little different. There was a very, she was very attached to that being temple president, but everybody could see she was not effective anymore. She was just, I don't know, she's just not effective. The temple wasn't prospering. And so...
Sorry, who? I lost for the connection for a second.
There was a temple president in Canada who was very, very senior, and she was very attached to the position of being a temple president, but people could see that she was not effective anymore. And so the council came together, and they put three co-presidents, very young, very active, very dynamic, very digitalized. And so they changed so many things into more dynamic. I heard that she was very attached, but in that case, apparently she was just very attached for herself, not because of the service. So we have to see, are we attached to something, a position or an access for us, or for the Lord? So we have to see. Otherwise, every politician is trying to keep his position, is trying to keep his party in power, and so on and so forth, or gain power. So we have to see, are we doing it really as devotional service, or we're doing it as just to maintain our position?
But it's very difficult to determine when is my weakness. Sometimes it may just be my weakness that I don't want to take a stand, and I don't want to really fight for something. And then I'm like, oh, it's Krishna. And sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I know that intellectually the difference between false ego and weakness, but how do I understand for myself in certain situations if it's my weakness or it's my false ego?
If you are open, if you have a doubt, then you talk with people. You talk with people, you express, you see what they say, things like that. I mean, that's step one. Second, there's prayers and so on. So main thing is to be open to the truth. That's the main thing.
Usually it could be mixture, like sometimes it could be Sattva Guna. Oh, I want to be like Prahlad Maharaj. Sometimes it could be false ego, mixture of good intention, some weakness, some fear, and also false ego. It's not so straightforward. It's not so easy to say this is false ego and this is weakness. Sometimes a mixture, I think.
The next verse.
Okay, you can read the next one.
Tushte tatra kimalabhyam anantamadye kim parguna vyatikaradiya yesva siddha dharmadaya kimagune sorry dharmadaya kimagunena chakarshitena saram jisham sharanayor upagayatam na. Want me to read? Do you want me to read?
I am muted. Yes, please you read.
Nothing is unattainable for devotees who have satisfied the Supreme Personality of God. It was the cause of all causes, the original source of everything. The Lord is a reservoir, unlimited spiritual qualities. For devotees, therefore, are transcendental to the modes of material nature. What is the use of following the principles of religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, which are all automatically obtained under the influence of the modes of nature? We devotees always glorify the lotus feet of the Lord, and therefore we need not ask for anything in terms of dharma, kama, artha, and moksha. Purpose. In an advanced civilization, people are eager to be religious, to be economically well situated, to satisfy their senses to the fullest extent, and at last to attain liberation. However, these are not to be magnified as desirable. Indeed, for devotees, these are all very easily available. Bilva Mangala Thakur said, Mukti Swaya Mukulitanjani Sivatesman Dharmartha Kama Gataya Samaya Pratikshaha. Liberation always stands at the door of a devotee, ready to carry out his orders. Material advancement in religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation simply wait to serve a devotee at the first opportunity. The devotee is already in a transcendental position, does not need further qualification to be liberated. It's confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Sagunan Samatitetam Brahmabhuya Yakalpate. The devotee is transcendental to the actions and reactions of the three modes of material nature, because he's situated on the Brahman platform. Ramaraj said, Agunena cha kankshitena. If one is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the lotus feet of the Lord, he doesn't need anything in terms of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, therefore, in the beginning of the transcendental literature, it is said, dharma projita kaitavo. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha are kaitava, false and unnecessary. And Matsaranam, persons who are completely transcendental to the material activities of separateness, who make no distinction between mine and yours, who simply engage in the devotional service of the Lord, are actually fit to accept Bhagavata Dharma, Dharmam Bhagavatam Iha, because they are near Matsara, not jealous of anyone. They want to make others devotees, even their enemies. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya remarks, Kankshate Mokshagama Pi Shukam Nakangshato Yata. Devotees are not desirous of any material happiness, including the happiness derived from liberation. It is called Anya Vilashita Shunyam. Sorry, Gyan, Karma, Dhyanamrita. Karma is desire material happiness, and Gyan is desire liberation, but the devotee does not desire anything. He is simply satisfied by rendering transcendental love and service at the lotus feet of the Lord, and glorify him everywhere by preaching, which is his life and soul. Dharma artha kama itiyo bihi nayadamo vividacha varta Manitaditadakilam nigamasya satyam svatmarpanam svasuridha paramasya pumsa. Religion, economic development, sense gratification, these are described in the Vedas as Trivarga, or three ways to salvation. Within these three categories are education and self-realization, ritualistic ceremonies performed according to Vedic injunction, logic, the science of law and order, and the various means of earning one's livelihood. These are the external subject matters of study in the Vedas, and therefore I consider them material. However, I consider surrender to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu to be transcendental. Purport. These instructions of Prahlad Maharaj stress the transcendental position of devotional service as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Mamsha yoga bicharena bhakti yogina sevate sagunan samatityatam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One engages in full devotional service, which does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. One who fully engages in the devotional service of the Lord is immediately raised to the transcendental position, which is the Brahma Bhuta stage. Any education or activity not on the Brahma Bhuta platform, the platform of self-realization, is considered to be material. And Prahlad Maharaj says that anything material cannot be the absolute truth, for the absolute truth is on the spiritual platform. It is also confirmed by Lord Krishna Bhagavad Gita 2:45, where he says, Tragunya Vishaya Veda, Nistragunyo Bhavarjuna. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna, be transcendental to all of them. Who act on the material platform even in one's activities, even if one activity is sanctioned by the Vedas, is not the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is to stay on the spiritual platform, fully surrender to the Parama Purusha, the Supreme Person. This is the object of the human mission. In summary, the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies and injunctions are not to be discounted. They're means of being promoted to the spiritual platform. But if one does not come to the spiritual platform, the Vedic ceremonies are simply a waste of time. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-8, Dharma Svanustita Pumsa, Vishvakshena Kathasuya, Notpadaye Didiratim Shramaiva Kevalam. Duties, dharma executed by men, regardless of occupation, are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the Supreme Lord. If one very strictly performs the various duties of religion, but does not ultimately come to the platform of surrendering to the Supreme Lord, his method of attaining salvation or elevation are simply waste of time and energy. Okay. Yanam tadedadamalam duravapamah narayano narasaka kila naradhaya vikantinam bhagavatastamakhinchananam padarabindarajasa pupadehinam syat. Narayana, the Supreme Personality of God, the well-wisher and friend of all living entities, formerly explained this transcendental knowledge, the great Saint Narada. Such knowledge is extremely difficult to understand without the mercy of a saintly person like Narada. But everyone who has taken shelter of Narada's disciplic succession can understand this confidential knowledge. It is stated here that this confidential knowledge is extremely difficult to understand. Yet, it is very easy to understand if one takes shelter of a pure devotee. This confidential knowledge also mentioned at the end of Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says, Sarvadharma paritija, mamekam sharanam braja, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. This knowledge is an extremely confidential secret, but it can be understood if one approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the bona fide agent, the spiritual master, in the distributed succession from Narada. Prahlad Maharaj wanted to impress upon the sons of the demons that although such knowledge can be understood only by a saintly person like Narada, they should not be disappointed, for if one takes shelter of Narada instead of material teachers, this knowledge is possible to understand. Understanding does not depend upon high parentage. The living entity is certainly pure on the spiritual platform, and therefore anyone who attains the spiritual platform by the grace of the spiritual master can also understand this confidential knowledge.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that even like, astrology, it's not a mundane science, even that's a Vedic knowledge, Vedic science, but still is not like Krishna consciousness. But I had to chant, like, just, recently somebody asked me, one girl, she's been asking for a long time, few years now, I want to study astrology. And, like, even to do that, she asked me, how did you do? And I said, for first 5 years, I didn't touch any book. I just chanted. And then after that first mantras, then slowly the right teacher, the right knowledge, everything starts to get revealed. And so I'm just thinking, what to speak of transcendental knowledge? I mean, astrology is not transcendental knowledge. It's like, it's not, right? It's not transcendental. It's just, it's on the Vedic system, but it's a tool to help us to understand our natures and achieve purpose of our life. But what to speak of, what all we need to, how we need to get our consciousness ready, and how we need to approach the spiritual master, and what attitude we must have. If even astrology, it takes years of chanting and aligning and opening our minds and becoming intuitive and be able to read the minds of other people. And what to speak of spirituality, it's even much more, very much, like it says here, it's extremely difficult to understand. Even Prabhupada actually said, even about astrology, he said it's very difficult science. But Krishna consciousness, self-realization is even more.
Well, actually, I mean, my understanding of this verse is opposite. See, astrology, it's okay, it's a Vedanga, and okay, that you need intuition, you need some, we could say, special qualifications. But here, Srila Prabhupada, the end, say, living entity is certainly pure on the spiritual platform. Anybody who attends a spiritual platform, the grace of the spiritual master, can also understand this confidential knowledge, because this confidential knowledge is natural. It's, sometimes it's just accepting, like the famous story of that cobbler who talks to Narada and say, okay, what Narayana was doing? Oh, he was just passing an elephant in the eye of a needle. And he accepted, oh yeah, of course, why not?
Yeah.
And the other Brahmana was much more qualified, obviously, than the cobbler materially. He couldn't understand, say, no, why Narayana should do something like that? It's impossible, like that. When Narada asked the cobbler, but how do you believe this? He said, well, I mean, Narayan can put the old banyan tree in one microscopic seed. Can't he put an elephant through the eye of a needle? So it's like sometimes Srila Prabhupada is playing here. Understanding does not depend upon high parentage. It's not a material thing. You have people, devotees were very intellectual, but they left Krishna consciousness because they started doing this and that, the other thing. They started looking for something more, or they started offending the guru, or they just got all entrapped in doubts, material doubts. How is it this possible? How is that possible? And how is this like that? And then they get completely frustrated, and they leave Krishna consciousness. And Krishna, kind of takes away their faith. Takes away their faith means gives faith in something else. And they feel, oh yeah, now I'm much better. Much better. It's like much better. How is much better? Where are you going next lifetime? So my point is that it's like Tadejatita Najatita Durita Vantike. Krishna is so far and so close at the same time, according to his Upanishad. Similarly, this knowledge can be very, very simple. Even a child can understand. Very, very, or like there was this Saraswati. She was 3 years old, 4 years old. Once she made the painting. One side was face of Krishna. I mean, as a 3-year-old, like very simple mouth and eyes like that. Then on the next side, the next page, the other side of the paper, she made a big round round with some stars, some planets like that. Well, very simple. And then she said, look, when you go, you put towards the sun, you can see Krishna in the universe. So Srila Prabhupada said, see, I mean, I don't remember exactly. I don't want to say something I don't remember exactly. But even she could understand these concepts, which is so difficult, no? That Krishna is in the universe, but is also outside. And she could understand it. And, okay, when you see like that, you see Krishna in the universe. And so many people are big theologians. They're breaking their heads for hundreds and thousands of years. Is the God immanent? Is transcendent? What's the relation for child? Was Krishna is the person, but you can see it in the universe. So this is obviously an extreme, but even a normal devotee, a simple devotee, Krishna says, I give them intelligence. So it's not material. It's just understanding means standing under. One just accepts, okay, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. We are all his servants. And he's the supreme mystic, Yogeshwar, and he has all the powers. And like that. I mean, it's not all the other parts you can understand in 1 minute. All the other parts are not sufficient because you can capture God by all these other paths. But he allows him to allow himself to be captured by the body. So you just serve with the body, come back to God. But that's the conclusion of all the Vedas. There's nothing else, really. There's nothing else. Yes, of course, we can understand more Krishna, okay, what he does in Vrindavan, what the Acharya says, but that's more like an elaboration of the basic idea. The basic idea is that. So, but astrology, it does take, here we could say high parentage. High parentage, I'm paraphrasing this word, high parentage means you need to have some karma. You need to have some good planets. You need to have practice. You need to, not everybody can just say, oh, I can become a great astrologer. Not that everybody can do that. So one sense is more difficult because, you need some, to paraphrase, a high parentage. You need some background. But for Krishna consciousness, everybody has got that background because everybody is a soul. Everybody is a soul.
Yeah, I love that perspective that, to be either a doctor or astrologer or something, you need specific skills, but to become devotee, everybody can, and it's a path that is open. I really like that perspective.
Yeah, like to become a politician. Not everybody can become the prime minister. Even statistically, you can only have a prime minister every 4 or 5 years. So in one generation, you can only have 4 or 5 prime ministers, more or less. So obviously, there's more than 1 billion people in India. Only few can become prime minister, just mathematics. Or so many can become MPs or MLAs. Just there is a limit. Okay, there's like a number. You can't have 100,000 MPs. The constitution say no. There are only, I don't know, many, 200, 300, I don't know. So similar, but Krishna consciousness is there's no quota. It's not saying, no, sorry, only 100,000 and only 300. No, everybody. This every person can be Krishna conscious, love Krishna. There's no limit, and there's no material obstacle, meaning material
qualification.
Or material disqualification, that somebody say, oh, he's being too sinful, he cannot become, or he's not very intelligent, cannot become. Like that. like that.
I mean, this is really paradigm shifting for me. Like the earlier verses, it spoke about. It's so true. We so hard to please people in our lives, so hard to please relatives, so hard to please our partners. It's so hard, and it's never enough. But then with the Lord, it's actually very simple. He's very easily pleased, and he's very easily giving shelter. And that point and this point together, it makes it like a equation, like a equation about material efforts is never enough, and spiritual effort is always more than enough to give you the right path, and there's no need for a hard and fast rule of qualification. I mean, it's a how do you say it needs to be understood very wisely. Like few days yesterday, I think, or day before, you were explaining about like sometimes we think because I'm a devotee, then I can do anything. We think that everything else is nonsense, and but that's not devotional mood in the mood of sattva guna. It's true that there are people who are very smarter than me or intellectually better than me, but I might have somehow another causeless mercy of Guru Parampara. I have this knowledge, not only knowledge, but the facility, the mercy, and the support system and sangha to be able to understand the absolute truth, the opportunity. And others may be smarter than me, but they may not be lucky on the spiritual level. And in today's, like the other side of the equation, it's like, yeah, you don't need to be qualified. You can please Krishna even without. But devotion is bhava, the bhavagrahi janardana is what Krishna is. I like that kind of conclusion here. Thank you.
At the same time, that's what I was talking about is the entry level. Means everybody can become Krishna conscious. At the same time, just like Srila Prabhupada explained, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyami, say, okay, anybody can offer that. But if somebody is a rich man, he cannot say, oh, Patram Pushpa, oh, I brought one tulsi, I brought one apple, I brought a little water, and that's it. No, then of course Krishna say, hey, you're cheating, or you're taking this as an excuse, as a pretext to be lazy, to be miserly. So similarly, if somebody has intelligence, has capacity, knows to read, knows to different languages, or at least understands one language, or has the capacity, has the time, but then he doesn't study, and then it's like cheating. You cannot just say, oh, no, I don't study, Krishna will give me the intelligence. No, if you have time, if you have the books, some people don't have the books. There are people in the world, devotees in the world, they speak only one language, and in that language there are no books, or maybe there is one small book. So in that case, you could say, okay, what can they do? I mean, maybe it's hard for them to learn another language, or so. Like Korean, become devoted in Korea. You don't have Bhagavad. I don't think you have the Bhagavad Gita in Korean. Well, certainly you don't have the whole Bhagavata or Chaitanya Charitamrita. And some people just speak Korean, and so many other things like that. So similarly, so the point is, yes, it's open for everybody, but then if one doesn't make that effort to learn, then they may lose it, because what are you doing with their time? What are you doing with their intelligence?
Yeah, there's that risk of complacency. Like sometimes we can just say, oh, Krishna, I just need to chant my rounds, and I don't need to like work hard, or there is that mentality, like you were reading in I commented before, no? Even grihastha life, sometimes devotees become very complacent, they neglect the grihastha. Hey, all this Maya, why should I give attention, or like that, you know what I mean? Like complacency can also like divert us. It's not so black and white. Any other questions or comments, Rajeshwar, Radhika Mataji, or Khushbu?
Anything for anybody? We have 20 minutes to go. Any doubt?
So I have a question. Like, if say there is this complacency, like you said, people don't use, what will happen? These people will be born next life as devotees, but they're not very smart, or
Every case is different. Every case is different. Depends on what kind of a complacency. Like I'm thinking of a person. This person is intelligent, very intelligent, but when she talks, she always criticizes other people. She's always talking about gossip. She's always lamenting about this and that, the other thing. So, of course, she's already suffering for not doing an extra effort to be more Krishna conscious. She could just take a book, discuss instead, the whole community, the social thing, and this is wrong, that's wrong, and this happened, and that happened, and this. So she already punishing herself. She could talk about Rishabhadev Maharaj, she could talk about Prahlad Maharaj, she could talk about Dhruva Maharaj, she could talk about Sukadeva Goswami, but instead she talks about this, that, and the other thing, and the neighbor, and the other colleagues, and these kids, and that kid. So it's like she's already punishing herself. So, so she's in a very kind of low-level consciousness, something which is not necessary. Because, okay, if you deal with this community, there's some problem, you got to deal with that. That's your duty if you're an administrator. If you're not an administrator, you don't have to gossip about people's life. What do you care? What's a big thing? There are three gunas, they mix and they create nonsense. Rarely there is elevation, but there are three gunas that create nonsense. It's already finished. There's no more news, but finished. There's nothing else. So if one doesn't use the intelligence, who has the intelligence, doesn't use the intelligence, then of course it's already self-punishment. Next life, I don't know. That's up to Krishna. Maybe he's okay, whatever. But that's up to Krishna. But in this life, you can see they're already suffering. Okay, there is a chat. No, Mataji. Okay. Okay, let's, we have more time. Let's share the screen. Okay, so Shrutam etamaya purvam jnanam vijnana samyutam dharmam bhagavatam shuddham narada devadarshanat. Maharaj continue, I received this knowledge from the great Saint Narada Muni. He is always engaged in devotional service. This knowledge, which is called Bhagavad Dharma, is fully scientific. It is based on logic and philosophy and is free from all material contamination.
These demonic boys are so fortunate, no? To have Prahlad.
Now, we need to understand what does it mean fully scientific, because I was listening to Hridayananda Maharaj the other day. Okay, I can share the talk if somebody's interested. It's a talk at Krishna House in Dallas, Texas. So I'll share in the...
And wasn't demonic. And so Aristotle concluded that there must...
Okay. So I want to share this if somebody wants to understand this thing. Where is it? Zoom. Stop share.
What does the talk about?
Well, it talks about many things, but it talks about the nature of science. So the nature of science is this, that there is a observation experiment, then there was somebody has an idea, then he has to make an experiment and see if it's true. And then he was saying how absurd is this idea applied to God, because God by definition is not under your control. You can only experiment with something under your control. You cannot experiment with something beyond your control. But in God, if you want to understand God, by definition, God is supreme. By definition, God is bigger than you. By definition, God cannot be controlled by you. So he was explaining, giving an example. If you deal with somebody bigger than you, like you want a job and there are so many applicants, then you need to understand what to say in the interview. You need to ingratiate the person. I hope everybody understands ingratiate. In other words, you need to please the person. You got to please the person from whom you want something. It could be the interviewer for a job, or I mean, even if you're a politician, you cannot just become a MP. Somebody has to vote you. So you have to ingratiate the people. You have to please the people with what you say, with what you do. So similarly, that's a science. That's a science. You have to please God to understand God. And that's a science. Science means, yes, that's the process. And so therefore, Srila Prabhupada use often these words, this expression, science. And here it's used for, where is it? Oh, 1 minute. Oh. Okay. Here, let's go back to the verse. Jnana Vijnanam Samyutam. Jnana, confidential knowledge, Vijnana Samyutam, combined with this practical application. And Srila Prabhupada translate that as this knowledge, which is called Bhagavad Dharma, is fully scientific. So it's not scientific in the sense, okay, you go in a lab, you put things under a microscope. Cannot put God under a microscope. Cannot make a little chemical, mix hydrogen, oxygen, see what happens, because God is everything. So you got to please God. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that it's an experiment on yourself, on your own false ego, on your own submissiveness, on your devotion, on your own effort, because other things are external. You mix some chemicals, you see what happens, you come to a conclusion, or you send a ray of light, and you see how it affects, say, a screen or something. Those are all external to you. In this case, to understand is the soul understand. It's something internal, and something internal to you. So there's two things. One, you got to please the person you want to achieve or understand, in this case, God. And the other one is that the experiment is on yourself. You are the lab. You are the person that has to transform. It's not a chemical. Okay, you mix some chemical that transforms. No, it's you who has to transform. So, and therefore people cannot understand unless they do the work of pleasing God and transforming themselves. Therefore, it is scientific, but it's a different type of science. And the scientific method is totally useless, and it's even absurd to think that could be useful. Okay. Next. Sridhaitya Putra Uchu. Okay, now they talk. The classmates talk. Sridhaitya Putra Uchu. Praradhatvam vayam chapi nartenyam vidmahe gurum. Itabhyam guru putrabhyam balanam api ishvaro. Balasyanta purastasya mahatsango duramvayah chindinaha shamshayam saumya syachadvishram vakaranam. The sons of the demons replied, Dear Prahlad, neither you nor we know any teacher or spiritual master other than Chandana Marka, the sons of Shukracharya. After all, we are children, and they our controllers. For you especially, who always remain within the palace, it is very difficult to associate with a great personality. Dear friend, most gentle one, would you kindly explain how it was possible for you to hear Narada? kindly dispel our doubts in this regard. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purpose of the 7th canto, 6th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Prahlad instructs his demonic schoolmates. So this is another cliffhanging type of end of a chapter. And the question is legitimate. They knew him as a they knew him in one sense. His life was more controlled as a prince. They will probably go home. There was a city. They could probably be more exposed to other things. But Prahlad never leaves the palace, and he was very small. So how did you know about Narada? So it's a legitimate question. And so we'll see what he says next. We have 10 minutes. You want to read, or you want me to read?
I can read. What Prahlad learned in the womb. In this chapter, to dissipate the doubts of his class friends, the sons of the demons, Prahlad Maharaj states how, within the womb of his mother, he had heard from the mouth of Narad Muni, who had instructed him in Bhagavad Dharma. When Hiranyakashipu left his kingdom and went to the mountain known as Mandarachala to execute severe austerities, all the demons scattered. Hiranyakashipu's wife Kayadu was pregnant at that time, and the demigods, mistakenly thinking that she carried another demon in her womb, arrested her. Their plan was that as soon as the child took birth, they would kill him. While they were taking Kayadu to the heavenly planets, they met Narada Muni, who stopped them from taking her away and took her to his ashram until Hiranyakashipu's return. In Narada Muni's ashram, Kayadu prayed for the protection of the baby in her womb, and Narad Muni reassured her and gave her instructions on spiritual knowledge. Taking advantage of those instructions, Prahlad Maharaj, although a small boy within the womb, listened very carefully.
Small baby within the womb.
What did I say?
Small boy.
A small baby within the womb. Listen very carefully. The spirit soul is always apart from the material body. There is no change in the spiritual form of the living entity. Any persons above the bodily conception of life is pure and can receive transcendental knowledge. This transcendental knowledge is devotional service. And Prahlad Maharaj, while living in the womb of his mother, received instructions in devotional service from Narad Muni. Any person engaged in the service of the Lord through the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master is immediately liberated. And being free from the clutches of Maya, he is relieved of all ignorance and material desires. The duty of everyone is to take shelter of the Supreme Lord and thus become free from all material desires. Regardless of the material condition in which one is situated, one can achieve this perfection. Devotional service is not dependent on the material activities of austerity, penance, mystic yoga, or piety. Even without such assets, one can achieve devotional service through the mercy of a pure devotee.
Okay, there's something on the chat. I heard Prahlad was in the womb for a long time as Hiranyakashipu doing tapasya. I'm not sure. I don't remember hearing that. Maybe. Let's see if it's mentioned here. Could be a good place to be mentioned. Okay, so okay. Okay, so Sri Narada. Interesting here is Narada is both the narrator of the story and he's also a protagonist of this story. So he's telling Yudhishthira the story, which also he is involved to. So Sri Narada Vacha Evam Daitya Sutai Prishto Mahabhagavato Sura Uvacha Tanasmayamana Smaram Mad Anubhashitam. See, Smaram Mad Anubhashitam, what was spoken by me. Translation. Narada Muni said, although Prahlad Maharaj was born in a family of Asuras, he was the greatest of all devotees. Having thus been questioned by his class friends, the sons of the Asura, he remembered the words spoken to him by me and replied to his friends as follows. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, when he was in the womb of his mother, Prabhupada Maharaj listened to the words of Narada Muni. One cannot imagine how the baby in embryo could hear Narada, but this is spiritual life. Programmed spiritual life cannot be obstructed by any material condition. This is called Haitukiya Pratyata. Reception of spiritual knowledge is never checked by any material condition. Thus, Prahlad Maharaj, from his very childhood, spoke spiritual knowledge to his class friends. And certainly it was effective, although all of them were children. Okay. Shri Prarada Vacha Pitari Prastite Smakam Tapasi Mandarachalam Yuddhodhyamam Param Shakrur Vibhuda Dhanavam Prati. Brahma said, when our father Hiranyakashipu went to Mandarachala mountain to execute severe austerities, in his absence, the demigods, headed by King Indra, made a severe attempt to subdue all the demons in warfare. Okay, so there was a war going on when Hiranyakashipu was meditating, doing his austerities. Pipilikaira eriva dishtya lokopatapanaha papena apo bhakshiti vadantu vasavadaya. Alas, as a serpent is eaten by small ants, so the troublesome Hiranyakashipu, who always inflicted misery upon all types of people, has now been defeated by the reaction of his own sinful activities. Saying this, the demigods headed by Indra arranged to fight the demons. So obviously they didn't grasp the situation, okay? They just didn't grasp the situation. They thought he's gone. He was not going. He was just preparing to basically kick the backside. But they think, oh, it's finished. Okay, now let's fight the demons. Te shamati atibalodhyogam nishamya surayutapaha vadhyamana surarbita dudruvu sarvatodisham kalatra putravittattan griyan bhashu parichadan navikshyamanas sarve prana paripsabaha. When the great leaders of the demons were being killed one after another, so the unprecedented exertion of the demigods in fighting, they began to flee, scattering themselves in all directions. Simply to protect their lives, they hastily fled from their homes, wives, children, animals, and household paraphernalia. Paying no heed to all this, the demons simply fled. So we can see how this world is like that. Sometimes a party wins, sometimes the other party wins. Now the demons are scattered. But then we'll see how the demigods, then they become subservient to Hiranyakashipu. Next, these are all verses without purpose. So, Vyalumpan Raja Shibiram Amarajaya Kankshina Indrastu Raja Mahishim Matarama Machagrahit. The victorious demigods plundered the palace of Hiranyakashipu, the king of the demons, and destroyed everything within it. Then Indra, king of heaven, arrested my mother, the queen. Okay, so for those who have followed carefully, yes, Hiranyakashipu was already very powerful as a leader, but then he went away, and the demigods thought, okay, he's finished, but it was not finished. But right now, they have the upper end.
But how did Prahlad know all this? He remembered everything even from the womb?
Maybe Narada told him, or somebody told him. This is history. This is, we could say, material history. So, either Narada told him, or, This is a common knowledge. It's a history. You can read in a book, you can read in the newspaper. So I don't know exactly how much was given by Narada, or how much he heard, because this is what the history is. That the demigods, maybe the mother told him, who knows? Me, King Indra, king of heaven, arrested my mother, the queen. So he knew these things. Okay, so with this, in one sense, intense moment of Indra arresting Kayad, was her name Kayadu? Kayadu?
Yes.
So was arresting Kayadu, who was pregnant with Prahlad Maharaj. So we stop here because time is up. So 776. We start from 777 tomorrow, Krishna willing. So thank you very much. Anybody wants to say anything final? Otherwise, we can close. Thank you for your attendance. Haribol.